So what do we make of these Democratic primaries? We are past New Hampshire. Something that we should all notice now is that Bernie is very popular. That was something that we should have noticed last primary season. And it took the DNC rigging the election against Bernie in order to make sure that Hillary got in. And it looks like they might be up to the same things again. It's hard to say exactly. I mean, when you look at Iowa, there's some strange. That's sort of a strange scenario going on there. You would think that Bernie would have done a little bit better, I suppose, but nonetheless, I guess he won or slightly lost to Mayor Pete, Mayor Peter Buttigieg. So let's discuss this. What can we learn from this? What are my observations? I think having watched politics and having cared about it and for some time now, I have some thoughts about why the Democrat Party isn't super pleased with Bernie Sanders being their nominee, and it bears watching going forward. What are they going to do? Are they going to acquiesce to this and just say, okay, Bernie's going to be the nominee, or are they going to come up with some sort of shenanigans to try to get Bernie out of the way? And I think that if you are a Bernie Sanders supporter, or if you talk to a Bernie Sanders supporter, they probably agree with me about that sentiment that the DNC isn't super happy with Bernie Sanders being the nominee. They obviously watched what happened last primary season. And if you look at the coverage, I watched, and to be fair, as a Trump supporter, I'm not super tuned in right now. I did sit down and watch Tucker Carlson last night, and he was saying that he showed a montage of MSNBC and CNN talking about Bernie, and you could see that the typical parrots for the DNC talking points were out, and you can get a feel for what their opinion is, what the higher ups with the DNC, what their opinion is of Bernie, whether they like him or not, and it's clear they don't. And so, I think it's an opportunity to learn something, because I'm not super surprised by this. Truth be told, Bernie Sanders is very similar to Trump in that respect, in this respect, in that he is an outsider. It's true, he's been in Washington all this for 40 years or something to that effect, but he's still sort of been on the outskirts of everything. Up until he wanted to run for president, he was a socialist by party, wasn't even a Democrat. He just voted alongside, lockstep with the Democrats. But so it's not a hard thing to imagine that when he wanted to become president, he would run as a Democrat. That's not truth be told, socialism and the modern day Democratic Party match very well. And so that begs the question, so why, if Bernie fits the mold, what's the problem with the higher ups? And I think I have two different things ways of looking at this that might answer that question. So the first thing is this: Bernie Sanders hasn't paid his dues in a certain way. This is true of both parties. If you paid attention to the primary season last year, one of the things that you'll notice, in fact, this is what got me liking Trump. At first, I didn't like Trump at all. But once I realized that the Republican establishment didn't like Trump, it awakened me to the possibility that Trump might be a legitimate outsider candidate. Up until that point, I sort of thought he was a bit of a fraud in regards to what he was saying, and I think that what has bared out through his presidency is that he seems to be a legitimate outsider who wanted to come in and make changes. You know, as somebody who's followed politics for a long time, he obviously said that, but you get so used to politicians saying these things and not actually being what they say. And in that vein, when the Republicans were against him, that drew my attention. It made me think, well, maybe there's something to this guy after all. And then when Ben Carson endorsed him, who I knew was an outsider, I thought maybe there was something to this guy. So, what does that mean? Well, what that means is, the anecdotal evidence of that is just to say, to give you an example in the Republican Party, and it would be this. I remember when John McCain ran against Obama, the rumblings were that it was now Mitt Romney's turn. And sure enough, the next election, Mitt Romney was the Republican nominee. And as a conservative voter, what are you going to do? You got to vote. I didn't want Romney as the nominee, but it gets to a certain point where you got no choice. Who are you going to vote for? You're going to vote for the lesser of two evils, which is often what we're left to choose with. And as we can see now from the way that Mitt Romney is behaving in the Senate, it was never a true choice. He was always part of the system. He never was an alternate to Obama, really. He was always part of the system, and I think that what we're seeing with both Bernie and Trump is that we're seeing legitimate guys who aren't yes men for corporations and lobbyists, at least to the same extent as some of these other people are. And that's the problem I think that the left has with Bernie. Bernie's saying all the right things. Well, I'll pull that back a little bit. He's saying a little too much. That's probably point 2. But let's stick on point 1. And then, again, the problem is what are the higher-ups, what do these people want? They want yes men. They want people to do as they're told. And I don't think they can trust Bernie to do that. And I knew, at least when I was relatively certain as the election got closer and closer, by the way the establishment was behaving toward Trump, that he was also the same way. And so you have this similarity between Bernie and Trump in the fact that they are legitimate grassroots candidates. And it's funny because when you look at the way that the media is sort of spinning the Bernie Sanders supporters, is they're making it seem like they're just these online people. You know, that's almost like a dismissive way of saying they just have a good way of working the online system. You know, it's just a small group of people who are really good at being online nerds that work the system, kind of. That's not true at all. What it is that the way you circumvent the narrative and the media stranglehold is online. That's where the people are. That's where the masses are. And so Bernie Sanders represents the masses to a certain extent. Now, he represents the masses that have been duped. He is an example of the system that the Democrats have created. the system of our education system. He's a prime example of what you get with our educational system right now. His primary voter base are young, college-minded kids, and he knows this. That's why he's catering to them with the idea of free college in a very base way. What you're really looking at here, I mean, because honestly, when you think about it, why is it that you would find an 80-year-old man? Why would an 80-year-old man be appealing to college kids? Well, he wouldn't be, except for the fact that he appeals to children. He appeals to children. Anyone who has kids knows you buy them things. I mean, that's how you are as a child. You're not responsible. You're looking for the handout from your father and your mother. Well, Bernie's like the surrogate father. That's all he's doing. He's looking to children, basically, and he's saying, I'm going to buy you some stuff. And it isn't really much more complex than that. I mean, there's more complexity involved, but I mean, that's the core of it right there. Another part of it is that the educational system has justified this sort of philosophy, this political philosophy, by making it seem like it makes sense, and you see how really good the educational system has done, because we're in the midst of an amazing economy right now, and you still have people believing that it's somehow an illusion. I mean, juxtapose the idea that we're in the midst of a great economy and we don't have one good example of socialism. Now, they'll point to some European countries, but if you look at it, when you look at the details, you find that that's socialist structures on top of capitalist economies. So they're not totally socialist. You can't just take and put in and implement what Bernie wants to do, because it destroys the whole system. And a lot of these people are saying the same thing. So point two, and the reason why the DNC is fearful of Bernie Sanders, is he's a true believer. He actually thinks this stuff is going to work. Now, the DNC wants to implement this, but they want to boil the frog slowly. And they realize that if you go too fast with this, you take a chance of losing everything that they've created. They have been playing the long game for a long time. They have put communists, socialists, and by they, I mean these people who have the same philosophy. They have infiltrated our universities, infiltrated our media, and they've been playing the long game, slowly convincing everyone, slowly taking the mechanics of government and making it larger and larger and larger, and never pulling it back, to the point where they cause a problem and then they have to create a new thing to fix it. It gives you a bigger issue. Like they're even talking about Medicare for all. It's just a single payer health care. So it's a shell game. And it's all about optics. It's all about language. If you get what you want, but you can't call it what it is. That's the game. And see, that's the thing that Bernie Sanders doesn't do. That's the game he doesn't play. He's just so transparent in what he believes. So he's going to run out and say, I'm going to give you health care for free and college tuition. But everybody who's not a radical knows that this isn't going to work. And the Democrats do say one thing that they believe about the political minutia of the electorate, which is this: you got to cater to the middle group, the middle, not middle class, but the I don't know, the middle spectrum, the people who don't, they're not super conservative, they're not super liberal, and you're not going to appeal to them because even they know that nothing's for free. There's no such thing. Nothing's for free. And so the idea of Bernie and what he represents is a great momentum in the primary because he's preaching to the choir right now. They're going to be all in on this. Then this is why you see this division, this split taking place in the Democratic Party, because it's great right now. And the people that have been in politics for a long time, they know when it comes to the general election, they're going to have some problems if Bernie Sanders is the nominee. The truth be told is they're not going to win this election. They're just not going to win this election. But Bernie Sanders could do some damage to their political philosophy if he gets the more people talk, if he sways the middle class, the middle ground people over more to the right, you're going to lose a lot there. And that's what the Democrats are fearful of. So I think that's the way that we should probably look at it. That's the way I'm looking at it. I think that the people who know how this works know that Bernie is going to represent really well when he's preaching to the choir, but when he gets to the regular election, it's going to be a hard sell, especially in the midst of a booming economy. But the problem that the Democrats have is that their field of candidates is pathetic. I mean, Mayor Pete Buttigieg is, a howdy-doody, that guy, I mean, so you put yourself in the position of the Democrats, who are you going to pin it on? Who are you going to pin your hopes on to beat Bernie? I mean, they really like the idea of a gay candidate, I would imagine, but I just think the concept of, this guy doesn't exude confidence. And you can say whatever you want to about Trump in regards to his demeanor and his nastiness, but there was no doubt in my mind that maybe you could say bordering on reckless, which could possibly be true, although I think that's a bit overstated. You weren't going to have countries that looked at Trump and saw somebody it saw a pushover. You get little Mayor Pete in there, though. That's, I don't know. And to be honest, the way that the globalists tend to look at things, maybe that's a good thing. So maybe Mayor Pete will get an influx of cash from some places, but I think he's going to be a hard sell to the American people. I think the black vote's going to be very difficult if Mayor Pete is their nominee. I don't think he's going to appeal to them. He has a problem with blacks in his own with his own record in his the little city that he ran. So I don't know that that's going to be a great sell. And the truth is that the great white hope of Joe Biden has crashed like anyone who knew politics knew it would, because Joe Biden is a complete and utter moron. And he always has been. He's a creep and a weirdo, and he's entitled. He's the entitled white guy. He is the example of the entitled white guy, and that's not appealing to anyone. Old crotchety grandma. Hillary wasn't. She had that same problem. That's not appealing. And milquetoast Pocahontas is not appealing. She's very. I mean, there's nothing. What do you say about her? She's not there. There's no positive, and there's only negative with her. I mean, she's an avowed liar, a provable liar. Who else do you have in this field? Klobuchar. You know, if I were a betting man, I'd probably put my money on Klobuchar to come in. But the truth is what I think is probably going to happen. I think the whole Bloomberg deal isn't to get Bloomberg in there. I think Bloomberg is there to spoil the whole thing, because I think the DNC knows they're not winning this election regardless. And I think what they're going to do is they are going to spoil the whole thing. And we'll see if this comes to pass or not. But I wouldn't be surprised if you saw a brokered convention and you saw Bloomberg be the cause of it. And maybe you even see Bloomberg run as a third-party candidate. I mean, we're talking about a guy who started as a Democrat, went to, I don't know. He's like Lex Luger of wrestling, man. I mean, every other week he's changing from a heel to a face. You know, this guy's I know for sure he was a Republican governor, I think, and then he went to independent, and then he's running as a Democrat, and I don't know what he was previous to that. I mean, these guys got no integrity. They have no clue. The one thing they do know is that the Democratic base, for the most part, is unfortunately a lot of mind dumb people who basically just get spoon-fed stuff by the media, what to believe, what to think, and then they go around telling everybody, like me, that we're the spoon-fed ones, that we're the ones that are believing and are brainwashed. But so I think because of that, I think they know that they could pretty much run. Bloomberg could run as a Democrat because, you know, the memories of the American people on both sides are about 5 minutes long, so nobody tends to remember that stuff. So, but it'll be an interesting primary season, and we'll see what happens with Bernie. Think it's fair to say he's a legitimate grassroots candidate, and I can tell you one thing: the Democrats are in a pickle, because if they don't I know the Bernie voters are not going to vote. They're clearly not going to vote for anybody else. I don't think the vast majority of them are not going to, and in fact, they may vote for Trump if they torpedo Bernie's candidacy again. So I think. I don't know. We'll see how this works out. The DNC may not have a choice. They may have to just ride this Bernie train and see where it goes. And maybe that's what they'll do. You know, I just said the American people's attention span's like 5 minutes long. So the whole idea about losing the country's, you know, on this long game, indoctrination into socialism and learning that, losing that momentum, maybe they won't lose it. You know, you can run Bernie and you can always come up with some kind of lie, push some sort of lie. You're never gonna, and you appease the Democrat voter that wants Bernie, but you do lock yourself into socialists for sure. And it's open socialism. It's not the low rent, clandestine type socialism that the globalists want to see for some reason here. But let's see what happens.